What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. And wow, if you're noticing, there's some new surroundings. There's a new scenery here. There's a new studio, and I am so excited for what the future holds here and what we're doing in the new location. Super grateful and fortunate for the relationship I've had with Speakeasy Podcast Studio over the years. It's been literally, we just celebrated 3 years of working with that studio, and wow, they took this podcast to another level. I was just a guy with a GoPro in a co-work space and bringing in difference makers from all over the place, and Rob and the team over at Speakeasy brought me into their studio, and they really made this thing a thing. They made it a professional thing where I was able to do it consistently every single week and have a team of people working on it. Now, where I've gotten my business, I was just telling the guest here, Rhonda Trask, and I was telling her about how kind of this metamorphosis of what I'm doing and working with people and realizing that there's so much more, there's so many difference makers out there that are struggling to tell their story, and there's more than what I'm able to get on the podcast every week. And then there's some people that are in their different journeys. They're at the beginning where, you know what, we need to flesh out and create really their story before they're even on the podcast. And so I kind of, having a podcast episode once a week, I was running out of time. And in the meantime, working with Kevin Brown with Motor City Truck Collision, with Garrett Truck and Auto. You guys have seen him on Coffee and Grit 3 times. And so his story. And if not, I highly recommend checking it out. This guy literally went from being a quote unquote grease monkey, making $11 an hour, to saving a bankrupt shop and getting ownership from that. And now he owns multiple businesses, is a multimillionaire in what he's doing. And so working with Kevin, he over the last year has really started to just dominate in his market and his space, which is what we wanted to do. We wanted to set out to really influence and grow him as an influencer within that space to help influence and make a difference in other people's auto shop businesses, right, or independent shops. And over that course of time, we've had a lot of success. And so what's the next thing? Hey, we need somewhere where we can make content for this show, right? And so Kevin takes me into the space, and you'll get a good look at it here. And I switched the camera, said, hey, I've got this space. What if we make a podcast studio? And so answer to both of our problems. We have a space for him, a space for me to be able to work with my clients. And then we are opening up a whole business sector and services where people can come in and use the space. Let's say, for example, if you're doing a Zoom call, not a Zoom call, but you're doing a podcast that is over Zoom, over virtual. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I'm doing that, I'm in this professional space, that the person on the other side does not match that professionalism. And so if you are serious about doing podcasting, but you're coming from a computer, come into a space that has professional equipment, that has professional cameras, and is going to make you look really, really good. The one I'm really, really excited about, again, is being able to sit with people and get them content that they can share that creates their difference. It creates that know, like, trust, and really creates that platform for them. So without further ado, just kind of talking about that and that intro, and you'll notice the change here, and there's some learning curves. I was telling Rhonda, you're the first one, you're coming in, you're gonna I'm taking you through the episode. I'm kind of switching things in and out. I'm used to having Cameron or Grant or Adam who are awesome, and so we'll grow and we'll get to that point too, but we're starting from the bottom. So without further ado, I've got Rhonda Trask here, and you guys know how I love having difference makers on, and I'm super excited to get into this. I've had Ken Schneck here in Brighton, a difference maker in downtown Brighton, who's constantly said, you need to meet Rhonda and talk about the difference that she's making. And so she founded an organization called Hearts CRi Michigan. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into what it is that she does and the difference that she's making with this organization and the story behind it. And so, Rhonda, welcome to the studio.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Super excited again to have you on and kind of learn through this. Like,
Yeah,
for example, I just didn't switch the camera on. So
it's all good. We just were figuring out why my chair, if it could not roll. So we're good. Yeah.
I know it's just the little things as you're going through it, and I've been fortunate through this process with the studio of again just showing up and having a conversation. So now I have a little bit more worry to have. But have you ever been in that situation where sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards?
For sure. And it's kind of what I do actually, because as I continue to create, there's elements you have to go back and redo, and you thought it was going to be a certain way and manage your own expectations. And so I think it's great though. It's always that movement forward requires a little bit of adjustment.
Yeah. Adjustment. There's like uncomfortableness,
Yeah.
there's like the habits that we're used to and the things that I loved. I loved those guys, that studio. I loved walking there from my house. This is a little bit of a drive, and not having the things, but being able to look at you have to get out of that comfort zone sometimes in order to really make the difference you're put on the earth to make.
Yeah, I'm totally about that. I shared with you prior to us going live that I was an eighth grade teacher in Farmington. And what I loved about that was every hour was different, every hour had challenges. And so I've kind of carried that over into what I do professionally now.
I laughed when you said it the first time. I was like, I can imagine the challenges that you're going through working with eighth graders and just the unpredictability that comes with that.
Well, they always say if you want job security, get a middle school endorsement. That's kind of a running joke. I loved it.
So tell me about, first off, let's start off with what is Hearts CRi Michigan?
So Hearts CRi Michigan Inc. is a nonprofit, and it focuses on predominantly foster, kinship, adoptive parents and children, obviously. And then we do some at-risk elements, and as well as we partner with people regarding human trafficking, the eradication of, obviously.
So what started this?
Yeah, that's a cool story. It's kind of, so I'm a person of faith, and it worked in a way where it came looking for me. So many times I've had things that I want to do, and I'm like, okay, when's this door going to open? When's this intersection going to happen? This was not like that, and it really took me by surprise. I was just, my husband was saying to me, why don't you come and go to this dinner? I'm going to connect some of our friends that are doing foster care work in their churches because I think they could share resources, partner, et cetera. And we had just adopted our son. He was 9 months old, but he had had colic and all kinds of things. And I'm like, it just seemed like a lot to even get up and go. And my mom and dad were in town. They're like, why don't you just go? And so I said, okay. So I sat at this table with, as your terminology, difference makers, right? And I just was listening. But the thing about, as I was listening, I couldn't unhear what I had heard. And so that's how it started. And a person who the state of Michigan had hired, her name is Trina Richardson. She is the faith coordinator for the state of Michigan. So trying to get churches involved and raise awareness. And she was there. And I just thought, I got to get her card. And I really didn't even know why I was getting it because I thought, this is crazy. My life is transitioning in so many new ways. It's really unlikely that I should take something else on. And yet it was the very thing. And so I just began to think in terms of ideas were coming, as we would call it, like vision kind of things, visionary. And I thought, why is this happening? And yet, as I then pursued, because I thought I should call her, and I just followed up on that. And she met with me and she said to me, man, I've been waiting for someone like you. And I'm like, oh, and I got to be honest, I was like inside going, why are you waiting for me? I can barely take care of what I'm doing right now because I was trying to get back to work and so forth. And with our son, he had just had nothing really serious, but just continual regarding digestive issues and things like that. Perhaps that's too much information, but it just was keeping me in places of learning and growing and trying to meet his needs. But that's how it started. And she invited me to go on a journey with her and just use the audience that I had to make them aware of, at different times, numbers fluctuate, but between generally 11 and 13,000 children who are in foster care just in the state of Michigan.
I had Abigail Hathaway and right before that, Crystal Meyer on, and they've shared their stories of adoption and
Yeah.
foster care, and it's heartbreaking for those that don't know and aren't aware. And I
Right.
think it's sometimes if you don't know somebody or if you've been pulled into a meeting like this, it's very easy to not realize that stuff like this goes on.
Yeah. And for Hearts CRi Michigan Inc., we predominantly provide wraparound services. So that was something in the beginning that as I was just transitioning and thinking and the ideas that were coming, because I say this unequivocally, I would never put this on people. I don't believe everyone's called to foster and or adopt. However, I think everyone can do something. And that's kind of our tagline. What's your something? As a faith community or as an individual, what's something that you can do? And as I have embraced that, we're 12 years old now, not Hearts CRi Michigan Inc., but the organization within our church that we founded, but I have come out of that. But we have 12 years of experience of saying to foster, adoptive, and kinship families, what do you need? And through asking those questions, I shared with you when we talked prior to, I didn't want to be like the Field of Dreams. Hey, if you build it, they'll come. I had no idea what to build.
Yeah.
My background was in public education. My master's was in leadership. And so there's pieces there that work, but it wasn't same. And so I just thought I need to do a lot of listening. And that's how I pursued it. I started, working with families who were fostering and saying, tell me your story. And one of the things that came out is they said, fostering is the most isolating thing we've ever done because all the coffee dates are gone. You're dealing with children many times that as they come into your home, you've been trained. But as someone said to me, it's interesting to sit in a class and hear about trauma and hear about responses. But then, and this is an actual quote, when it shows up on your kitchen floor, and the child's sitting there and you're trying to say, now, what did they say? And how am I supposed to? And so you start to use a term that like kind of hunker down because you're just unsure and your normal patterns and relationships are strained, stressed. I have a friend that as they fostered, they met some pushback from their family because during holidays, the kids they were fostering would trigger because holidays weren't a good thing for them.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't know what all this was. And so then the grandparents are like, and so there's just a lot of listening and a lot of endeavoring to meet them where they're at.
You said something to me when we met last week in talking about even friends will want to be helpful and the things that you learn as a parent to do to parent a child don't work the same
Yeah.
with a child that's been through that trauma and that experience.
So this is something, as I did a lot of listening, I tried to be a learner, right? And so one of the things that I think is really important to understand, exactly what you said. So if you have bio kids in the home and you bring in foster children, you're parenting two different brains. So you're parenting, I'm not saying always, but most times. And so the child that has been through trauma has a brain that is completely different and the strategies must be completely different. So there's a huge challenge right there. And then bio children can say, the inequity here is huge because I'm being penalized or I'm being treated this way. This child, it appears, is getting away with things.
Yep.
And so that's a big struggle. But training, I've actually participated in that. I had an aunt that took in 3 of her brother's children. And she had 2 bio children in the home. And they didn't know the family really well. There had been addiction and different things, so there had been estrangement. So when she brought the children in, because she did not want them to go through the foster care system, so she did a kinship placement. See, kinship numbers are growing, and that's why we put that in there. Many times your kinship placement, they just say, yes, we'll take the kids. They have no training. And I can go on about this. This is something that I'm continuing to learn about, is that with your kinship placements, there's very minimal training because they're like an emergency lifeline, to say, we'll take the kids.
And the system's like, whew.
Exactly.
Like they're
because,
relieved
yes,
and
because family, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Most times. And
Yeah.
so it's a good thing. But it causes a strain. And then for the aunt, or let's even move to a grandparent, it changes their role. Because now it's, hey, did you do your homework? Hey, I've got this conference at school. Why didn't you? So the grandparent and even the aunt-uncle role change. And so their expectations, they're thinking, we'll take them in. It's going to be good. Well, then you're dealing with all the things that maybe aren't so good. And all the things then that you as a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle that you are having to navigate. And so challenging because of the bio element, perhaps bio children with foster children and parenting two different brains. I mean, that's really hard.
It's hard to parent.
Yes.
And then, and then to add that challenge and to your point, I think it's probably a blessing in itself that there are the bio family that are gonna step up and say, we'll take them.
Yes.
But then what is that next step to prepare them?
Yeah. And I could go, yeah, I worked with a couple and we did some online mentoring with them. They were probably 27, 28, a newborn, and took in their brother's children, a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. And the abuse and neglect was huge. And so they were way over their heads. And I think, at some point we just had to say, is this the right move? And they were asking themselves that. And then they came up, yes. And so then we moved through, even through Zoom calls, getting them mentoring with someone that could help them understand parenting a brain with trauma. And what does that mean? It's a term that we use so often, but what does it mean? Because you can be trauma-informed, trauma-trained, but then you have to initiate trauma response. It's really 3 elements. So you can know about it, you can think about it, but then you have to act with it. And man, that's hard because so many times that as you are parenting the trauma brain, it triggers you.
Yeah.
It's you're triggered. And so there's so much there, but we're hitting on parts of that, of why fostering is challenging and why Hearts CRi Michigan Inc. then wraps around and says, we see you. So here's a support group. Here's occupational therapy that's trauma-informed, trauma-trained, trauma response. That's big. A lot of our schools are trauma-trained and trauma-informed. They don't have a response mechanism. If that makes sense?
Tell me a little bit more about that.
As far as trauma,
the trauma response form.
So okay. So you want me I'll give you a story that
Yeah.
happened. So some of our team will work with, and we embed them in something that'll be coming up in a lot of churches, Vacation Bible School. Okay.
Yep.
So you invite kids. You've got tons of kids and tons of activities and music, right? Just all of it.
It's my 5 favorite childhood summer memories. Vacation Bible schools for sure. So yeah.
When you ask me what's the trauma response, so when you're inviting kids, you need noise blockers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You need self-regulatory exercises or people that are watching, because children that have a trauma brain, they do not self-regulate. So if I take a brain, here's your emotional brain, your thinking brain, and here's your amygdala that kind of does the trauma, the triggers. Well, we can, as we move through things, we're talking, our thinking brain is going, come on, it's not that bad. Come on, you can do it 5 more minutes, right?
Yeah.
Your kids with a trauma brain are like, I'm done. Their language is
Fight
not
or
available.
flight.
There you go. Fight, flight, fawn, freeze. Many of them lose their vocabulary. They go into whatever because these are survival modes, right? Whatever survival mode they utilized when they were experiencing abuse and neglect, it just goes. And so I'm going to say all that to now say, so I was at my desk, and one of our embedded workers that's trauma-informed, trauma-trained, trauma response, my phone starts, I said, and she's like, are you in the building? Yes, I need you. Those calls don't come a lot. I grabbed safety team and we went. And so I've got this guy, he's a little bit smaller than me, and it's a superheroes theme. It's the last day. He's had enough. And he's in this state, okay?
Yeah.
He's got Superman, the big cutout, and just heaving him into walls, okay? So if I don't understand trauma response, I go in and say, you need to put that down. He's picking it up and throwing it harder because he has lost his everything's a mess. He can't bring this down. He doesn't know how to self-regulate. And so I just looked and I knew his name. So I stayed clear and I told everybody, you can go. And the safety team stayed out of the room, but they're there. And they're on walkie-talkies. And you do a bunch of stuff. because you have kids that are at risk, they're traumatized, and so they're going to respond at times. And I said, you can throw that at the wall, you can't throw it at me. And he didn't. He's just looking at me. And I said, you can just shake your head. Is that cool? So he did. And I waited and I said, so when you're done throwing it, we probably need to talk because something's up. See, I'm trying to get this to come down. I'm trying to get his words back. Now, tell me in a school, like I get it, tell me in some kind of a ministry. This is what I'm saying. This is what it requires to get him to come to a place of self-regulation. And I used his name because I knew him and he had a name tag on, but using his name, and he's lost his language, I want him to get it back so that we can get him into this self-regulatory state. And we went through some places, and a couple people poked their heads in that are on my team, right? So I knew they were there. And I just brought him through after he's finished throwing. I said, do you think you're done? And he looked at me and said, yes. And I said, do you think you can name what the problem is? Because if they can name what it is, you can start to rehabilitate that. But see, can I just say, and I'm not here to pass judgment. I'm just saying most people would go on and say, put that down. And they would start with a punishment or movement towards, right? And I understand that. But the trauma brain, like we're talking about, if you know that this child, which we did, okay, is one of our foster care kiddos, we have to then respond differently. And I don't see that as letting him get away with anything. My goodness, he's been abused in ways that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And he's triggered. And it's day 4 of VBS. I'm triggered. I just know how to talk to myself, right? It's the last day. It's going to be okay. And when he said, I need to see my sister. See, if they can name it, you've got this coming down. So if you, and see, we've embedded even, like we have people that work with us in different ways that can ask good questions. Now you can't bombard them because they need what's called choice and voice, because so much of their life has not been their choice and their voice has been lost. So it's huge. So I gave them a choice. See, I'm practicing trauma-informed, trauma-trained. You asked me that. See, I'm practicing what's on paper, right? What I know, choice and voice. You can throw that. You can't throw it at me. Now that's where I got to draw a line, but you can throw it.
Yeah.
Okay. So choice and voice. When you're done, see, I'm empowering him. When you're done and you think you can talk, let me know. And I just sat on a table. And as he moved then and said, I need to see my sister, I'm like, okay, that's good that you can do that. So I know this is coming down. He's got his word bank back. It's logical. There's logic there. And he can say what he needs. Once they can say it, you can remediate, right? And I said, it was during the closing, I said, your sister's quite a bit younger than you. She'll be sitting with a lot of little kids. I said, how would you feel about that? Choice and voice. He said, that'd be awkward. I said, it could be. I said, what if you just saw her and did a high five? How would you feel about that? See, this is trauma response. This is why that's a lot of work.
Yep.
And yet I will say, and we moved through. He gave her a high five. He sat with one of my guys that gets embedded, was waiting, meaning, is embedded with. I didn't just let him go. But they did what they needed to do. He rejoined his group with the team leads that had to call me. You know what I mean? That's a win. He finished it. I did talk to his foster parents when they came in, and they're like, I'm like, stop. We just had a great win. He's walking out the door and he feels great. I don't need you to do anything. It's a journey to get there, meaning to be able to respond that way. And that's a lot, but I think it explains what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Parenting 2 brains. If my son did that, I'd be like, dude, one more throw and then you and me. Because I know he can come, right? I know he can come to this place.
Yep.
But I can't do that to the trauma brain child.
going through that process, one of my things that I do through my boot camps, different speaker boot camps for entrepreneurs, and just a core belief that I have is that, it's like the Navy SEALs say, in times of chaos, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall back to your level of training. And I think that really fits well with what we're talking about here, that you're going to take a new foster parent or a new family member that takes them in, and they've never practiced any of this stuff, and you could tell them, you could train them or tell them all these things, but then they get into the situation and then that happens. And so I'm so intrigued through your story. How did you get to that like Jedi place where you're like, okay, you can throw the ball?
Yeah, I let me say this. I'm better with the foster kids because I go in with a mindset. And so I know I can't explain it. I just, as I've worked through, and I have worked through on my own, but I've also sought out people to coach me that are farther on the journey.
Yeah.
And so that was huge for me because when I always say it was like someone hijacked my life. That's how it felt. I'm like, and I'm going to go back to a little bit of history. The state faith-based coordinator asked me to start chairing a committee. I'm like, I don't even know what we're talking about. She's like, you're fine. Like you have the passion for it, you have the skill base for it. I'll coach you. Write down the acronyms you don't know afterwards, because she said we need a person that's visionary and can lead and break big to small and implement. And she said, so I'm doing this all day. So to answer your questions of how did you get Jedi, I just kept trying. I said my like superhero power is I just keep getting back up.
I love it. Yeah.
Headed hopefully in the right direction.
Yeah.
Right. And trying to acquire skill along the way. With a skill base that is consistent with, again, what do these parents need? What do the kids need? And so I think just listening and then seeking out not only the foster parents that could help me, but then other people that were doing what I considered really good work in foster care, as far as leading and some other nonprofits. And I really had to find my niche because I felt guilty initially that we weren't raising up foster parents. Do you know what I mean? I felt like I didn't feel like that was my thing. So I'm like, and I'm an adoptive parent. So I'm like, I kind of thought maybe that's how it was going to go. And it didn't. It segued differently. And so to be providing wraparound, initially I thought, is this what I'm supposed to do? And I did. I mean, I felt almost embarrassed a couple times because people would say, so how many kids have you seen adopted? And how many, and I'm thinking, and I had to get used to saying, that's not what I'm supposed to do. That's not my lane.
Yep.
My lane, at least at this time, is like right now, Hearts CRi Michigan Inc., occupational therapy that is trauma-informed, trauma-trained, trauma response. And we use something called the interactive metronome, which is all computer-based, impulse control, ADD. A lot of our kids, this is interesting, trauma mirrors ADD, ADHD, and a lot of other things, but it doesn't come from the same place. You understand?
Yeah, totally get what you're saying.
So that's tricky. And I just hands down say to school systems, I know that's tricky.
Because we put everything in a box. Yep. And when they fit the same, it looks like a duck, walks like a duck kind of thing. It's easy for, especially the establishment, to say it's a duck. Right.
And federal funding comes through checking boxes. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot there that we're trying to pull apart. But I don't, how do I want to put this? At this point in time, I just think us offering services where we understand. And so the occupational therapy with the interactive metronome, it's super cool. But this is interesting too. It was so targeting their deficits, they could only take so much of it. We thought, we'll get this grant. We got a grant from the Carls Foundation. And we thought, we'll get this IM, and these kids will be on it. And like you know what I mean?
Just like that. Really just like that.
Yeah. I know. It's just so simple. Like you said, you just constantly are regrouping. And what we found out is it so pinpoints their challenges, they could do like 2 or 3 minutes. And we weren't expecting that. Now, our occupational therapist, she's able to do all kinds of modalities, right? And so we get that, meaning she uses them. But that was interesting. But I thought, the way someone explained it to me, they're like, Rhonda, if you went to the gym, what's the thing, the exercise or the modules that you would avoid? I'm like, probably core, And they're like, so what you're saying to them is do 30 minutes, just your core. you would be like, I'm done because I can't. Now I can do some of the other things. And so that's what we're doing. We're supplementing. But when we're talking, as we're wrapping around, when we say trauma-informed, trauma-trained, trauma response, like the interactive metronome, it helps their neural pathways. And so they're just like a stroke victim, because this is used, is learning how to walk or talk again. We're endeavoring to teach them how to have a healthy brain. I mean, that's crazy when you study the neural pathways and the different things that happen with the trauma brain. We are targeting areas with their impulse control and with some other things that are just going to be so helpful in them as they strive to see themselves make progress in ways where they aren't fight, flight, fawn, freeze on steroids. Like they can be more measured, right? They can talk to themselves. They can self-regulate. And so when you ask, like another element like we've talked about, that's how we're wrapping around through that type of occupational therapy. And I described that a bit because when we even applied for the grant and I've talked to some people in some very well-known, what I'd call avenues, advocates for kids.
Yeah.
They're like, isn't occupational therapy like if you break your arm? I'm like, I mean, so that was
Yeah.
interesting. And the whole trauma lane is really, I don't want to say it's new, but how we're approaching it perhaps.
As I hear you talk, I just had a really awesome conversation with, she's a mindfulness coach, Brenda Lindsay, and we were talking about a lot of the same thing and how to strengthen I almost called it the prenatal cortex. Is that the right?
There's
No,
so many
that sounds
terms,
more
yeah.
like that's probably totally wrong. But like strengthening the front brain to overcome the fight or flight, or basically
Yeah, it's like the frontal lobe kind
frontal
of.
lobe,
Yeah.
but it's basically those neurons. And as you were
yeah.
talking, I'm thinking about, and especially as you were telling that story and going through that framework of, I picture your through that, you're giving them, you're helping them restructure the way that they process, and you're giving them these tools that they can take, that as they become aware and they kind of catch themselves as they continue. Is that kind of what?
Yeah, that's the goal, is that they'll start to recognize sooner. And so rather than, we call it like flip your lid,
Yeah.
rather than get to this, you're eventually where they're hovering, and then they can come down much quicker.
Yep.
And they can self-regulate. We self-regulate. We have something that comes, not always, but most of the time, right? We are able to take that thing and bring it down and talk it through, either with another person or ourselves. There's something that our brain is trained to do that, the healthy brain.
Mm-hmm.
And there's everything that they've experienced. I always say to people, kids are not removed because it was just kind of not good. I mean, it's bad.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have stories, and I'm not going to tell them, but stories, I mean, it's bad. And so to think that child has been in that survival mode. So those fight, flight, fawn, freeze, those are going to go on steroids for them. And they're just going to go there quickly because they have to survive. But the thing that helped them survive now in other environments is their nemesis.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, and then I can only imagine what's happening to them is they're doing the thing that helped them survive, and now it's causing chaos.
Yes. And they haven't been able to trust people. And some of these kids, like if we go back to our foster children, especially, if they end up in 5 or 6 homes because we don't understand trauma-informed, trauma-trained, trauma response, right? And I would say this, I used to question when I was more novice, like, who are these foster parents that keep giving, just keep saying, I can't, or it's not for me. But then I recognize the more I work, they just feel like they're failing the child many times. If that makes sense, because
Totally.
they're like, I just don't know how to help them, and probably someone else could do it better. And I know I'm making broad brush statements, but there's a lot of truth to that, because I haven't met myself personally. I've just met some amazing foster parents, and it could be because of what Hearts CRi Michigan offers.
Yeah.
I'm meeting the people that are saying, I'm in it to win it.
Yep.
I may have failed, but I'm going to continue going. And can you help us with OT? Can you help us with tutoring? Can you help us with one of our newer services is IEPs, the individualized education plan
Yep.
that is sensory trauma informed with a master coach who's certified in that to help our foster kids in school, whatever type of school, to receive services, not just educationally, but to understand their sensory needs, their proprioceptive needs. I mean, and like you were talking, all of the things that we've already talked about, how to incorporate those, not so that they get away with things, but so that there's some kind of designated space. I worked with a family where in the counseling office, the social worker got involved, where there was a safe space. They could, because a counselor can be busy. They've got a lot of kids in a public school. But here's the chair. If my chair's full, here's the next stop. And they created a system for that child to self-regulate. And so it's just important as we navigate to say, for Hearts CRi Michigan Inc., we see you and let us be a part of your journey because we don't want it to be the most isolating thing you've ever done. We've really normalized normalized that there are triggers, but our teams are ready to meet those needs. And like, you don't scare us. You don't scare us. Like don't feel that way.
It kind of reminds me. I had a guest on a few months ago, Mike Gruely, and he was talking about like the life of an entrepreneur. And this is a good comparison because if you've never been an entrepreneur, you don't really get it. You don't understand it can be fun and exhilarating, but it also is extremely scary and unpredictable and all these things. And if you do it alone and you go at it and you're like fighting through it, you can really think I'm the only one going through this.
Yes.
And then you look out there and you open your eyes up and you realize there's other entrepreneurs going through it. There's other people going through it that are doing very similar things to what I'm doing. And they've tried this, they've done and they like, if we got together, we could really learn from each other. And two, that there are organizations like yours for entrepreneurs that you can go out and, like myself, for example, that are support for entrepreneurs to help them shift and grow and get the tools they need in order to survive. But like if you're going through something, being a foster parent, for example, there are others going through it. And then there are resources out there that, and people like yourself, organizations like yours that want to empower them.
For sure. And that was what we started to realize. We were creating community for them. So if for a while the grandparents are like, I've met amazing grandparents. I'm just using that story. But if the grandparents are like, we don't know how to approach this, embrace it. You guys said yes to fostering. We didn't. And it's not that we don't want any relationship. We don't know how to navigate it. That's legit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's hard. And so we're saying it's okay. So we've got you here for a while. We can help here for a while. And so you're not just isolated, you're not on your own. And so we really strive to create community. And what I think is super cool is through our support group, as foster adoptive parents have come in, because some of them now are adoptive parents, we really work with parents for the first 18 months when they adopt, because it's not like, oh, you adopt and everything's like great. I mean, it's the same. It's just the status has changed, right? A different box has been checked. And so we really endeavor to say, here are our events for the year, here's the services we offer, and they're things that are either free of charge or it's very modest, as far as payment. And so that's the really cool thing, that then they start getting together, see each other, and I can say, like, our support group team, they have fed into the foster parents in such a way, they create their own play dates, they're doing respite for each other so that they're sharing the burden. Right? And not that we want to say children, but there's a heaviness that comes as you take kids as they are. And I can give, for example, part of that is you have this idea that perhaps you're going to bring in children that have had nothing, very little, and you're going to say, here's your bedroom, here's the food, here's this, we're here for you. Well, no one's ever been there for them.
Yeah.
So they're going to test you on that.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, and this happened, that bed that you think is so great, I'm going to sleep on the floor. And what are you going to do?
Yeah.
That food that you say is for me, I'm getting some Taco Bell. I refuse to eat that food. There's pushback because they're testing, because they're like, why would I believe you?
Yeah.
No one's been here for me like that. And maybe I've been in 5 homes and I'm 12, you know? And so there's really interesting. So as we normalize, share stories, like just expect that great bedroom, it could be embraced, but maybe not. And then how are you going to respond? Hey, if you prefer the floor, I get it. But when you're ready, it's there. Choice and voice.
Hmm.
It's not magic. It's not like, oh, all of a sudden they go, oh, I'll do the bed. You know, the Superman thing that was like the thing I shared about VBS. That was textbook. I was just like, oh, thank you. You know, because it doesn't always roll like that, right?
It's so nice when it works out.
Yeah, I told that story on purpose. I mean, that's a good one, right?
That's a win.
That is a win. Everybody, I mean, the leaders, the mom and dad, the kid, most importantly, we all, I mean, I kept my composure. I mean, we all had a win, but there's a lot of times, I mean, it takes years. Kids that perhaps with food issues are huge because they hoard food.
Oh.
I know people that have adopted kids that were in foster care that they just did not nutritionally have food, let alone good food, right? And they're at 4 and 5 years and the kids still hoard food.
Wow.
And it's been available.
Yeah.
But like we talked about, you're parenting a different brain.
Yep.
So,
And I'm sure they don't even know from a conscious standpoint of why they're doing that.
yeah. I think that's really big as kids are old enough to understand, to help them. I have a good friend that's a therapist, and she's like a rock star type of therapist. She deals with kids that really come from, we use the term hard places. And she is, as soon as you feel that they can begin to engage, to teach them about the brain, the trauma brain, however you want to term it, and then ask them, so here's the characteristics. Which one do you think is yours? Again, choice them. If they choose not to participate, she lets them not, right? And she and her husband foster, adopt. I mean, they're an amazing family, right? And so I think that gives them an awareness as they progress. Both of my kids know what type of brain they have. We've talked self-regulation. I'm like, you need wall sits.
Mm.
And so we've normalized, and we do the thing. Everyone's got something. This is your something. This is your something. So let's just meet it because there's amazing things for you to do. And we don't want to be derailed. And other activities that you can, as you're working with kids who come from trauma, I have used with kids in different kinds of play therapy. I'm not certified to do that. Just it happens that I'm in their arena. So we do some things. Like a map, old school, like when I used to go on a trip. I remember my dad would get out like an atlas. Now, of course, my kids are like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." Like it's a novel.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's novel.
You're flipping through, trying to.
Like, let's go. But to use, my husband and I went to Tahoe for a fundraiser for a compassion ministry. He's on that board, and they gave us a big map. And so I have used that with other kids. Like, you pick the car you want, like a little Hot Wheels kind of thing. Okay, so start wherever you want. What are some of your goals? And we put those out there. Now, are these choices taking you there, or are you on a side road?
Ooh.
So there's like cool things you can do that aren't just like, let's sit down and discuss your trauma. You know what I mean? So I'm not advocating that much. As they get older, I don't think there's anything wrong with them understanding, because that's how they begin to heal, and we give them choice and voice. Do you want to get well? Like, here are the strategies. If this is your brain type, meaning your response, so what are the things that we should do? And I'll partner with you or whoever, that's what we do. And so, but the map drill is kind of cool because
that's
they
really
like
cool.
it. Yeah.
Some of this stuff, and I know at the beginning we're talking about we're not parenting our kids the same as kids with trauma.
Yeah.
But I think these are exercises that are good for anybody.
For sure.
The map, and are your choices leading you to closer to where you want to go versus further away. I think that's a really good, cool, awesome realization in the giving them choices in asking questions. You're listening to it and it's like, how do you build confidence? And you build confidence through making choices. And it's like even giving your kids these choices as they make them, either they're going to win, they're going to learn, they're going to get something out of the experience, but they were able to make the choice, and then and then take it. And the more they make their choices, the more confident they can be.
Yeah, and that neural pathway, we will get a ton into that. But so many times when they've made so many wrong choices, it's like a super highway to that wrong choice for the kids. It can be for any child,
Yeah.
right? Any child, like you're saying. But our kids in care, so many times those choices are just automatic. And the right choice would be like the equivalent of trying to take a machete and hack through a rainforest. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
So they're like constantly trying to hack a new pathway. It's hard. It doesn't feel good. This is easy. And yet to get healthy, and you're right, it goes to any type of, it's good for adults too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But that's the hard part for so many of our kids in care that have experienced that trauma is the other path, because that's why they're very prime for human trafficking, sex trafficking. Because the youngest child I've worked with that was sexually assaulted, meaning the parents of, that was in foster care 3 months. And so, it was funny. And I worked with a faith-based group that I was helping them establish a foster care ministry, right? That's another thing we do. And so as I was going in, and the pastor is like, yeah, I'll carry candy in my pocket and hand it out. I'm like, you won't.
Oh.
I'm like, you won't. You
No,
won't. Like
yeah.
he was trying to be like, yeah, I just want to, like give them candy and
Yeah.
like they're having a good time and they're on inflatables. And when they come see me, I'm like, that just wouldn't be a good move because, and I won't go into story. I've worked with children that were given candy for certain things. I've worked with families that they were freaked out the first time they put the child down to bed that's 3 and things started to go down. And they're like, oh my word, this child has been sexually abused. And so this is the reality, too, of as we're working with people ask me, and I know I'm moving in a little bit of a different direction, but I mentioned at the beginning, we partner with a couple entities that are involved with sex trafficking and I started to move that way with foster care because it's something like 60 to 80% of the in-person stings, they're finding foster kids. Because they're just groomed for that. And if they age out of the system or they run, this is not, it's abhorrent to us, right? But this has happened to them so often that it isn't processed the way we would process. And so there's other pieces of that too, as we build in choices and heal brains, right? To get them to be healthy, that there's other places that this is going to go and help them. And we hold out, what is a long-term goal? That sounds kind of, for some of our kids, it'd be like to get up tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that. But as they start to move in healthier ways, is to say now, is that taking you, like your little vehicle, whatever you picked? If you say this is a goal and to set some goals, that's huge for them. But they can't be big goals. Like for our little guy at VBS, it was to walk out the door versus someone having, because he's a pretty good sized little guy, versus people having to pull him, right? Because, so it has to be like a match. Just like we behavior match, it would have to be a goal match and then give them choice and voice.
They can't have a goal that they can't possibly meet.
Because sometimes they self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Because they don't even know what it's like to be successful. They can't possibly believe, right? So they will self-sabotage. So there's so much teaching that goes into that, that it's a lot. But I always say it's not too much, because if you find your community as a foster family, and then you partner with other people, like we've talked about, and then you find resources like Hearts CRi Michigan Inc. and others, because there's a lot out there that are close in proximity, because that has been something we've really worked on, is let's get these things to pop up closer to where people are so they don't have to drive an hour and a half. That's unrealistic.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing a lot of different talking.
I love it. And it's diving in and really learning from it. And from the way it sounds, you can probably agree with this, but I believe that stories are data with soul. And I love that when I ask you that question of what is this, you're like, let me tell you a story, because it did give me a really good picture and understanding of what that modality is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it leads me, and this is, ties right into it, is how do families, how do people find your organization? How do they seek out that resource?
Yeah, we have a website, Hearts CRi Michigan Inc. So it's all there. It's laid out. There are the services we offer are there. Our history's there. As far as our story, as far as how we've come about, something that we're really trying to do is beyond the OT and the IEPs, right, and support groups and things of that nature. We're really looking to help any type of faith-based organization or congregation move into what we call care communities, and that there's training involved in that, and it's where people a church, predominantly it's churches that come, but there are other organizations that have contacted us, but you actually adopt a foster kinship or a newly adopted family for 1 year, and you meet with them. I mean, there's training. You have to have a lead, and meaning the lead of that team and a secondary person. But there are all kinds of things that start to happen where you say to the family, what do you need? And we're here for a year. Many times it expands beyond the year. Team members may change, and there's training for the team. But it looks like we need a meal twice a week because, as I said, when I was endeavoring to be a good listener, I worked with a family, and this is an overused phrase, but I'm going to use it. They're just rock stars. They had 4 bio, and they took in a sibling group of 3.
Wow.
And their kids were all under 7. So they had 7 kids. They were amazing. And I mean this. And they had discussed before and they were both under 35. And they had discussed before they got married that this would be a thing that they knew they were going to foster.
Wow.
So they had agreed to it. They had their 4 children and taken in this sibling group of 3. And so here's where I'm going with this. Predominantly the wife, she took this on in this way. I mean, the male was he was the one that was saying, I want to do this. Like, if we get married, are you willing to do this? And she's like, I'm totally into it. So it was a joint deal. But the wife, because of him working, she had to take and do 30 appointments per month. Each child had 10 appointments. And so as we talk, they would have been an awesome couple for a care community to say, here's 2 meals per week, right? Here's a respite twice a month. We'll come in and bring a team. What is it that maybe you need a tutor in? One of the kids isn't at reading level, so we could come in. You get the retired teachers that love this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or just people that love to be involved. So we had one group where they did the laundry, and they'd say, leave it on the front porch, and we'll return it. We'll text you, and it will be on the front porch. Because they didn't want to get involved. It was a lady. She didn't really see herself as the cooking thing wasn't her deal, and coaching and different things or tutoring. But she's like, I love to do laundry. I don't understand. I just don't get that.
Isn't it funny? There's somebody out there that loves to do the things that we hate.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool. And it can be hard to fathom that sometimes, but there's somebody out there that would love to take that thing off our plate.
And and we've got, a couple of those groups up and running. And so for that family, the huge part is you have to be consistent because there's so much that is inconsistent.
Yeah.
Right. And the 30 appointments a month, that was crazy. But it was everything you could think of. Each child had 10 appointments per month. And so I look back at that, and we did things to help them, but I didn't know about care communities at that time. They were really out of the gate, the people that I really worked with to listen to the most, because I'm like, if they can do this, they're like great. I'm like, sure. I need to hear what they're saying. And yeah.
So how do you raise money? How do you keep your organization running?
So we are lean and mean. I mean that in all sincerity. This is so you and I talked. I need to get better at this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not that good. I have this huge heart for, my chair's moving. I have this huge heart for people and for what they're doing. And mostly it's private donations, just to be honest. We've had a couple, like the Carl's Foundation came through for us with the IM, with the occupational therapy. But that's mostly how we just right now, our private donations that people make. I have endeavored a couple times to hire someone to go out and kind of do some grant writing and things, and it just hasn't come to fruition for different reasons. And so we're okay.
Yeah.
We'd like to be okayer.
Yeah.
But who wouldn't?
Yeah.
Right? So I've not really let that be my driving force. And so we're good. But I have to do better at that because you can't just, assume people are going to hear and have a big heart. And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
And that's why I asked that question is because it's like, it sounds amazing, but then it's like, how do how are you taking care of you in the organization? Because it's like putting our oxygen mask on first. And I'm like you, where it's like, I want to run out and help everybody.
yeah.
And then I'm running out of air.
I'm so guilty of that. And so I'm kind of downplaying it, but yeah, guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's that thing because it's kind of hard to do both. And in something like foster care, it's so constant. I have to decide what not to get involved in because it's like you're saying it's on oxygen. I
Yeah.
mean, you know,
Yeah.
it's broken people in a broken system, and I'm not here to criticize anybody. I'm just saying it's hard. And so you're continually meeting needs of people who are just ready to say, if we don't get help, we don't know if we could do this. In fact, and that was part of the why we added occupational therapy, because a family that I know really well took in a little girl that they didn't realize how severe some of the issues were, and she needed immediate intervention, the little girl, and it was going to be 6 to 8 months. And the family, because they had a bio child that it wasn't going well. I don't mean they weren't getting along; it was getting violent. They're like, we don't know how to do this. And as a result of that, I'm like, I couldn't solve it for them because they did end up having to say this isn't working.
Mm.
But they said to me, hands down, if services had been there immediately, we would have endeavored with everything to make that work. And so I was like, you know what? They needed occupational therapy. They needed some counseling. We can do that. Like that kind of spurred me on into move into some of the spaces that Hearts CRi Michigan Inc. is now, I think, doing a good job in.
It's amazing. And it's cool how in the story you go from, attending this event and then having this calling to reach out and have
Yeah.
this conversation to where you're at now in that journey.
Yeah. It was so unexpected. Like I said, and when I tell the story, in kind of a long version, I'm like, I can remember we were at Bonefish Grill in Novi. I mean, I know because I wasn't getting out much.
Yeah.
And so I remember just thinking, so I remember I ordered pad thai. My coffee was hot, newer mom, right? And the food was amazing. And then I'm eating it going, why is this calling my name? I'm hearing these people talk. If you remember, my husband was saying, let's connect them. They're doing the same thing. They're both amazing couples. They're friends of ours from two different areas in around the Detroit area. But I think we can help them to do more. And little did I know it was yes, and they have connected and they're friends now. And they're amazing, but it was to also be a catalyst for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It still kind of blows my mind.
That's amazing. You never know
Right.
where our calling is going to come from.
Bonefish Grill.
Bonefish Grill. Have you ever read the book The Alchemist?
I do not think I have, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, check it out if you're ever picking up books.
Yeah.
Super awesome book. I ask just about every guest because I believe it ties to our journey, but it is waking up with that dream or that vision, and it's like I need to pursue this thing, and you have no idea why, and it's just a whole journey and where it takes you, and it unfolds our purpose.
Yeah, the overarching thing for me has always been children. It's just segued into different, public school teaching. And then when I left the public schools, I went in and did like our youth ministries for a while at the church. They needed somebody. And, my thing there was taking kids on missions trips and overseas and in really impoverished communities and running camps like soccer camps and theater camps. So, and then my husband always says this. He's like, you recreate yourself every 10 years. So this is now, And then it moved into this. So there's a commonality there.
Yes.
But it has played out because I thought I would be a principal. Like I thought at this stage in my life, I'll probably be a middle school or high school principal because I love the classroom. But I thought that'd probably be where I'll go. And that's why I got my master's in that. But it just has taken on a different, as we say, kind of a different flavor and look. And I'm okay with that.
What I love, so I've told this story a couple times recently, but growing up, or especially through high school, I wanted to be one of a couple of things. I wanted to either be a psychologist, like a therapist, like
Yeah.
help other people that had been through experiences like mine, and help them through it, empowering them. Right.
Mhm.
The other thing I wanted to be was a sports journalist.
Oh, cool.
And so going through it, the first thing right out of the gates, going to college for psychology is a long time. It's a
Yeah.
long time and a lot
It's a
of
lot of
money
school.
that I didn't have. A lot of school. I wasn't interested. That sounded like a long time, right? And so my love has always been sports and journalism, and I wanted to interview difference makers, and I wanted to do all this content, right? And so fast forward several years later, I did not take that route. I ended up leaving school. I got into a career in sales and kind of climbed the ladder and got in this leadership. And long story is I'm circling back around, and one day I was telling somebody what I wanted to be, and they're like, "Well, look where you're at now." And I'm like, "Wow."
Yeah.
I'm coaching. I'm helping people get in, and most of what we're doing is in their mindset and their belief system, and it's switching the narratives and the stories they're telling themselves. And a lot of the stuff that you're doing is creating those new neural pathways, creating a new way of seeing the world, and shifting paradigms, and it's a lot of what I'm doing with my clients. And then look at what we're doing right now in creating content and doing interviewing difference makers and sitting down with people and really getting their story. And I went this route that most people didn't look at as the route to go because it wasn't in the box.
Yeah.
But I think that's always been my purpose. It's always been God's plan, and it's always been like, where can you go make that highest impact?
Yeah.
And looking at yours, and it's always rooted down to the kids. We look at the teacher as the conventional way, the principal is the conventional way that we do it, but you're making, I think, a huge impact in a place that needs focus and attention.
Yeah, and that's so funny. I remember when I left the public schools, our neighbor, he was a city commissioner in the Brighton area, and so he said to me, he said, "Hey, when you decide to go back to a real job, right?" And he was funny like that, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? He
yeah.
just, yeah, he's like, "Let me know, I've got some connection," that kind of deal. And I laughed because I thought, how absurd! I'm not going back.
Yeah.
Like everything I thought I was going to do, I'm not. And so there is that departure from what you thought and embracing, it sounds kind of corny, but the unknown
Yes.
and
Yeah.
just being willing to be a risk taker.
Yep. I love how you're a visionary.
Yeah.
You're not like just woke up and decided I'm going to do this mission and you got pulled into it.
Yeah. I really did. I felt like I felt like I would be like disobedient, to what I knew I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to live like that. It's just not, it's not to be self-aggrandizing, like some kind of, hey, it's a thing of, I just made a decision a long time ago. It's got to look like I know it's supposed to look versus the easy way or what other people expect. I just don't.
Yes.
Yeah. I just don't. I want to mess with them a little bit.
I love how your eyes light up and sparkle at the same time when you say that.
Yeah, it's fun. And that's, while it took me totally aback, and I did, I was like, I'm not, like, I can't possibly go on this journey. And yet I knew I couldn't get away from it. And, it's a cool thing. And my husband was having a conference with, I don't know if you're familiar with an author, Mark Batterson.
Mm-mm.
And he writes it's leadership. He's pastoral leadership kind of guy. And he had said about things, it was called the circle maker, like you draw a circle around it. And then, for me, I would pray about it, right? If you can't get away from something, you draw circles around it, maybe, and you just say, okay, this, this, this. And so that's what I did. Is people think that's what I did. And I couldn't get away from, there were 3 like visionary things that I felt like I could do to have an impact on foster care. And I thought after 3 days, 4 days, because I kind of thought I'll draw a circle and they'll get dim. Like, how it's like, it's just not calling me anymore. It's my heart for kids. Because that's how I started rationalizing. I'm like, this is because I love kids. So you could tell me anything and I'm going to think, yeah, we could do this and this. Like I'm thinking that's my visionary love and then my love for kids.
Yep.
So I thought, and it kind of was a little bit cheeky. I was like, I'll draw circles. And they're going to get like I said, like it's going to be lost in the shuffle. It's not going to call my name as much. It was louder. So, and I don't know if people, I don't know. That's just the truth. So I knew then I had to get out that little card for Trina, that faith-based coordinator for Michigan, and
Yeah.
call. Or I can't remember if I called or emailed. We met at Panera. She's like, I've been waiting for you. And I'm like, you can't. As I've already said, I'm like, you shouldn't be. But she was. And in that way, it was just the right time, right place. And it was a movement forward.
You need to read the book The Alchemist, because there's
Okay.
a spot where it's like, I've been waiting for you, and like, what are you talking? You know, like, what are you talking
creepy.
about? But it's that, it is that, and it's like the journey that we go through, battling in our heads of like, is this for me? I'm going to draw circles around it, and then you make that call, and they're like, I've been waiting for you.
Yeah. It really took me aback, because I even proposed something. We had been doing a Christmas party in the city of Detroit, like providing the gifts, but letting the church hand them out, because we didn't want it to be us coming and like rescuing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't like that. So I wanted it to be us empowering a church right downtown in Detroit in a really rough area, to let them give the gifts away. Well, there was a pastoral change, and so we had reached out, and they weren't sure. They thought they might do something different. So I'm like, cool. So I was like, man, our community's used to like stepping up and doing something. So I said to Trina, and again, it was 4 weeks from Christmas. I said, we need to do something at Christmas, and we could always help with foster care. And she's like, let's make it happen. I'm like, in 4 weeks. And she did. And so we did. And that was the beginning of the journey.
Yeah. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
That is so awesome.
I thought for sure she'd say no. And I thought, and it wasn't like I was looking for something easy. I just wasn't thinking that was for me. I just thought I might be a little bit, convoluted because of all, when you hear the stats and the stories, I mean, it's rough. And then if you have a heart for kids, like it's kind of your passion, your mission, the way you're shaped, I'm like, I can't get away from this. And so it just was really interesting, but it's all kind of come to fruition in ways that I never envisioned, but super cool. Because my big goal is I'd love to have a camp for kids in the summer. I know camps exist, but I'd love to have, in fact, I have a Zoom call tomorrow. I'm like, with a model that's in Indiana. And so where the whole family comes, because that was the other piece, if I can just take a minute, is to have the whole family have wins. And so because I initially was thinking a camp for kids in care, her model is everybody comes like 2 days, 3 nights, something like that. 3 days, 2 nights. And she is going to give me her model. I'm working with a couple other people here to say, man, could we do that? Because I'm all about creating those wins. So then I need some sponsorship because
Yeah.
So I'll come back.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, that is inspiring. And you think about, there are so many things, maybe, I'm not saying even for this segment of kids, but like a support where it offers for the kid, but to be able to bring in the family and get them wins, I think is so impactful, because you can work with the kid and then they go back home, and then the parents, or, they're not any more equipped to pick up where you're left off.
That's exactly it. So to bring them together, and that was something as I did listening, I haven't really hit on that, is they're like, we need wins as a family. And then one of the people that was coaching me, she said, here's the deal, Rhonda, reiterate this. I'm trying to think of the percentage. It's in the 30s. She said, if a kid has, let's say it's 35, it's in the 30 percentile. If a kid has 35% of his or her day, it doesn't even have to be consecutive, where it's healthy, you're starting to repair the brain. So I would share that with the parents. Hey, and they were like, oh, that's a breath of fresh air. It doesn't even have to be consecutive. It can just be like throughout the day. If we can get into that 30, I'm sorry, I can't remember, but she coached me in that. And so I think in terms of, as I started listening to the parents, exactly what you're saying, they just felt like we can't, and I go back to that, for a family to say, we just can't do it. We feel ill-equipped. To give them wins is exactly what I'm endeavoring to do, and wins together. So, like fishing, right?
Yeah.
To go fishing, to give choice of voice. Not everyone wants to fish, and a lot of these kids have never done things like that. So if you think about that, we had way back some kids that we took who were considered categorized at risk. From Detroit, we took them out into Oakland County to a big kind of farm area. And some of the kids were just like, they'd never seen a horse up close, which I thought that was interesting. And I'm not saying kids in the city don't see horses. These are kids who are at risk. These are kids who they're just on the cusp before they would go into foster care. So their life experiences are limited. I get that kids in Detroit see horses. These kids, several of them had never seen one up close. They had seen pictures. And some other things they did, with a lot of the different activities that were at this location. It was a first for them. And so I would like to create those while the family's there with them, if that were to be the case, or even they do it a second or third time. But there's something happening for that family where they're building memories together and then creating wins.
That is amazing. And you just think about experiences anyway. When you go through experiences together, I always even think when I was a kid, like I talked about vacation Bible school or going to a camp, and I'd come back and it was like those experiences were so cool. You felt closer to the people you went through them with.
Yeah.
And then you're back with your family or whatever, and you feel like, oh, now things are back to normal.
That book for an elementary school about filling the bucket, you're filling the bucket of the family bucket. In ways where when things get tough, you're like, that memory's still there. And it kind of fuels you in a different way. And you see yourself as part of something that perhaps prior to you didn't feel.
Oh, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Rhonda, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I loved getting deeper into your story, your journey, what you're doing for the foster community, and how you're empowering families. It's been so awesome getting to know the difference that you're making.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity because, like I said, I'm not very good at this. I just keep doing like what we're doing, and it is all consuming. And so I appreciate even it's healthy for me to reflect like, that's good.
Yeah.
Not that it again, not self-aggrandizing, but in a way where I am like speaking life to myself, because then I need to speak life into others and to just reflect. I think reflection's super healthy.
It's so huge. And also, I think for the most part, we're a collection of the negative things that, we all, no matter what if we had trauma or not, we collect those things and think about the things that we didn't do or the opportunities that we missed. And so when you can go back and reflect at like, wow, the difference is, look what I am doing. Like this is, I had my mom on for the 200th episode, cool. And she's a single mom. Like we have a really cool story. But when I gave it to her for Christmas, she was the 200th episode. She looked at this thing like, I don't want this, right? Like, why would you gift this to me? and then, nervous getting into the studio. But then we had this amazing 2-hour conversation. Cool. And when I gave her back the episode, she watched it. And the first thing she messaged me was like, wow, I really sound like I know what I'm talking about. Like, wow, that was really cool.
So do that for me, okay?
Right. And that's what's fun about it is because like you're making the difference. Like you're not making up some story. That's what's easy for me. I just ask you a few questions and you're passionate and you can talk and share a story in a compelling way that has me excited to ask more questions. And that's what makes my job as a podcaster so easy, is having people like yourself on that are, that are passionate and that are sort of living the experiences. And so going back to my mom's like, oh, wow, I know what I'm talking about. And then the episode came out and the doctor she works for was like, wow, Sherry, you're so strong. I didn't know that you'd went through those experiences. Like so amazing. All these people are reaching out. I had all these people messaging me and saying, tell your mom how amazing she is. And so I'm sending her these messages and her chest is puffing out, right? Because it's like, wow, like we're in our heads about how deficient we are a lot of times. We don't see that difference that we make, or or maybe our friends see in us, or our clients see in us, or the people that we make the most difference in the world, what they see in us. So we don't see that oftentimes. Yeah. And so that's what I love, is being able to sit down and have a conversation. And I'll be excited to get it back to you so you can listen to it and be like, wow, you're a difference maker. And I'm so glad Ken was like, you need to have Rhonda on.
Oh, I appreciate that. My dad and Ken have lunch. And so I have to I have to say this. My dad would say to Ken, you got to help Rhonda out. Ken's like, for sure.
For sure.
So I'm like, those two, it's awesome.
That is so awesome. Well, Rhonda, thank you so much for coming down and being my first Coffee and Grit episode in the new studio.
And thank you for having me. I really mean that.
My absolute
pleasure. I
pleasure.
Just really appreciate the opportunity.
My absolute pleasure.
Get up, get out, let your roar be known. Entrepreneur swagger, this is your throne. Afraid to be vulnerable, nah, that's your goal. The real stories where the truth gets sold. No more playing small, no more self-doubt. You're a face-eating legend, let it all come out. Grab your values, your vision, your mission, your pace. You're the game changer now, time to own your space. Raw Consulting, yeah, they're lighting the spark, turning wannabe dreams into works of art. So step up, show up, let your power be seen. You're the best version now, go live that dream. Roar loud, be proud, it's your time to rise. Your authentic self is your best disguise. Change your mind, change the game, break free of the shell. Cause hell's just seeing who you could have been. Oh well, get up, get out, let your roar be known. Entrepreneur swagger, this is your throne. Afraid to be vulnerable, nah, that's your goal. The real stories where the truth gets sold. No more playing small, no more self-doubt. You're a face-eating legend, let it all come out. Grab your values, your vision, your mission, your pace. You're the game changer now, time to own your space. Yeah, Raw Consulting, yeah, they're lighting the spark, turning wannabe dreams into works of art. So step up, show up, let your power be seen. You're the best version now, go live that dream.